Ah, my dear one, come close, settle in, and let Grandpa's voice carry you on another journey beneath the gentle song of the rain. Tonight, I'll tell you of Elderwood, a forest so old that even the stars seem to bow low above it, their light weaving between the branches like silver threads. And in that forest, on a night much like this, with rain pattering softly upon the leaves, there walked a young girl named Lyra, carrying a small lantern that glowed with a light unlike any flame known to man. The lantern had been passed down through generations in the family, its origins lost to time, its glow steady and warm, no matter how fierce the wind or heavy the rain. They said it held a promise that whoever bore its light could find their way through even the darkest night, so long as their heart stayed true. Lyra's journey had begun at dawn when the village elder had come to her family's cottage, his face lined with worry. Deep within Elderwood, past the ancient oaks and whispering pines, lay a spring said to have healing waters, and it was needed now, for a sickness had come upon the village, leaving the youngest and oldest among them weak and pale. No one dared the forest's deepest paths, for Elderwood was known to shift and change, to lose even the surest traveler. But Lyra had stepped forward, her lantern in hand, her heart steady with quiet resolve. And so, beneath the soft fall of rain, she entered the forest's embrace, the glow of her lantern a beacon against the gathering dusk, her boots silent upon the mossy ground, her thoughts filled with hope and a promise to bring the healing water home. Now close your eyes, little one, and let the rain song guide you into sleep as the forest opens its secrets to the girl with the lantern. The rain fell gently through the canopy of Elderwood as Lyra walked deeper, her lantern's glow casting a warm circle of light that danced across the trunks of ancient trees and the tangled roots beneath her feet. The path that had seemed so clear at the forest's edge now faded into a patchwork of moss and fallen leaves, as if the woods themselves wished to test her resolve. The trees grew taller, their branches arching overhead like the ribs of some great cathedral, and the air grew cool and damp, filled with the earthy scent of rain-washed bark and blooming ferns hidden in the shadows. The forest whispered around her, the soft rustle of leaves, the drip of rainwater from high branches, the distant hoot of an owl. But Lyra did not waver. Each step was guided by the steady glow of her lantern, and with it came a quiet courage, a reminder of why she had come. Every so often she would pause, listening to the rhythm of the rain mingling with the soft hum of the forest. She thought of the village elder's words, of the faces of the children she hoped to heal, of her mother's gentle touch as she handed Lyra the lantern at dawn. The forest seemed alive with memory and magic, as if watching her, waiting to see if she would turn back. But Lyra's heart remained steady. The deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to open, revealing hidden streams that trickled over stones, patches of wildflowers glowing faintly in the lantern's light, and ancient stones carved with symbols long forgotten. With every step, the rain's soft song and the lantern's gentle glow became her guides through the growing darkness, as Elderwood drew her closer to the spring's secret heart. The rain's soft patter grew steadier, wrapping Elderwood in a silver veil as Lyra pressed on, her lantern casting its warm, unwavering glow through the thickening mist. The path had long since vanished, swallowed by moss, ferns, and the patient work of time. But Lyra's heart kept her steady, and the light of the lantern seemed to guide her feet as surely as any map. Yet, as the forest deepened, so too did the shadows. They gathered between the great trunks like pools of ink, and the air grew heavy, thick with the hush of something unseen, watching, waiting. The trees seemed to lean closer, their gnarled branches like ancient arms, and the sound of the rain upon their leaves became a rhythm that echoed in Lyra's ears, steady yet strange, as if the forest itself whispered in a language forgotten by humankind. It was then that Lyra felt the first true challenge of the woods. The shadows seemed to shift, not merely the play of lantern light and rain, but shapes that moved with intention, circling at the edges of her vision. The warmth of the lantern was her shield, its glow keeping the darkness at bay, but she could feel the pull of the forest's deeper mysteries, testing her courage, seeking the measure of her heart. The air grew cooler, the rain a soft drum upon the canopy, and Lyra stood still, drawing a deep, calming breath. She remembered her mother's voice, the elder's plea, and the faces of the villagers who waited, trusting her to bring back hope. And so she lifted the lantern higher, letting its light spill further into the night, and spoke softly into the hush. I come with kindness in my heart and a promise to keep. Let me pass, and I will honor this place. The shadows seemed to pause, as if considering her words, and then slowly they melted back into the trees, leaving Lyra alone once more with the rain and the soft glow of her light. Rest easy now, dear one, and let the rain carry you into gentle dreams. The forest exhaled a long, quiet breath as the shadows slipped away, and Lyra felt the weight of their gaze lift, replaced by the steady comfort of the rain song and the soft glow of her lantern. The deeper she ventured, the more elderwood seemed to reveal its hidden beauty. Delicate mushrooms glowing faintly at the base of ancient trees, ivy weaving intricate patterns across fallen logs, and tiny silver droplets clinging to spider webs like strings of jewels. The path was no path at all now, only the weave of nature untouched by time. But Lyra's heart remained sure, guided by the lantern's light and the promise she carried for her village. After what felt like hours, though time seemed to flow differently beneath the endless green canopy, she heard it, the murmur of water, a stream, its voice soft but clear beneath the rain's hush, winding like a silver thread through the forest floor. Lyra quickened her pace, hope rising like the dawn in her chest. But as she neared the stream's edge, she saw at once that this was no ordinary waterway. The stream glowed faintly blue, as if lit from within, and its surface shimmered as though touched by moonlight, though no moon had yet risen. The air around it felt different, cooler, charged with quiet magic. Lyra knelt beside it, watching as the rain danced upon its surface without disturbing its glass-like stillness. When she reached out, intending to test the water, a soft ripple spread, and from somewhere upstream came a voice, not loud, not harsh, but steady, like the stream itself. "Why do you seek the heart of Elderwood?" the voice asked. "Neither man nor woman, neither young nor old, but part of the forest's timeless song." Lyra held her lantern higher, its light reflecting in the stream's mysterious glow. "I seek the spring's gift," she answered gently, "not for myself, but for those who suffer. I come with hope, not harm." The stream's glow deepened, as if weighing her words, and then the water parted just enough to reveal stepping stones that led across. The forest watched in silence as Lyra stepped carefully onto the first stone, her lantern lighting the way toward whatever awaited on the other side. Now sleep, my little one, and let the rain's soft voice bring you peace. The rain fell like a soft curtain over the world as Lyra stepped lightly from stone to stone, the glow of the stream lighting her path as much as her faithful lantern. Each stone felt cool and smooth beneath her boots, as if worn down not by water alone, but by the footsteps of all who had come before her, seeking the spring's gift. The air grew quieter with each step she took, the sound of the rain fading until it felt as though she walked through a dream, the forest holding its breath in watchful stillness. When at last she reached the far bank, the earth beneath her feet seemed to hum with the magic of the place, and the trees parted gently, revealing a glade unlike any she had ever seen. In its heart bubbled the spring, clear as crystal, glowing faintly like starlight trapped beneath the water's surface. Its song, a melody so pure it brought tears to Lyra's eyes. But as she stepped closer, the final test revealed itself. From the shadows beyond the spring came a figure cloaked in mist, tall, silent, and with eyes that glimmered like the depths of the forest itself. No words passed between them, none were needed. Lyra understood that this was the spirit of Elderwood, the guardian of the spring, and that before she could take even a drop of the precious water, she must prove herself not with promises, but with the truth of her heart. The figure raised one hand, and the glow of the spring grew brighter, reflecting Lyra's face as she knelt beside it. She saw herself as she truly was, weary, hopeful, small beneath the great trees, but filled with the quiet strength of her purpose. Without fear, she lowered the small flask she carried into the spring, the water swirling around it like a blessing, and spoke softly, "I will carry this gift with care and return it with gratitude. I ask not for myself, but for those who wait with hope." The guardian watched, then slowly lowered its hand, and the spring's light softened to a peaceful glow. Lyra knew she had been granted the gift, not because she asked, but because she listened and honored what the forest held dear. The spring's glow shimmered softly in the rain-washed glade, casting gentle light upon the guardian's misty form as Lyra rose. The small flask now cradled carefully in her hands. The water within seemed to pulse with life, as if the very heart of the forest beat quietly beneath its surface. The spirit of Elderwood regarded her with eyes deep as the night, and though no words passed between them, Lyra felt its silent blessing, a warmth that settled over her like the softest of cloaks, as comforting as the rain's steady song upon the leaves. Slowly, the guardian stepped back into the mist, fading like a dream at dawn, and the spring's glow dimmed to a gentle shimmer, as if returning to its quiet slumber beneath the earth. Lyra stood for a long moment, listening to the peace of the glade, feeling the weight of her task not as a burden, but as an honor. When at last she turned to go, the forest seemed to part for her, the path home revealed by the soft gleam of her lantern and the silver threads of rain weaving through the trees. The way that had been hidden on her journey inward now unfolded before her, as if Elderwood itself guided her steps. The rain kissed her face, cool and sweet, and the air was filled with the scent of wet leaves and blooming wild flowers. With each step, Lyra felt the forest's magic not as a mystery to be feared, but as a friend walking beside her. She carried not just the water, but the memory of the spring's light, the guardian's gaze, and the quiet strength that had brought her this far. The journey home had begun, and with it came a deep, steady peace that filled her heart as surely as the rain filled the forest streams. So rest now, dear one, and let the rain's soft rhythm guide you into gentle dreams. The rain fell on, steady and soft, wrapping the forest in its silver hush as Lyra made her way through the winding paths of elderwood. The flask of spring water, glowing faintly within her pack, seemed to warm her back as if the spring's magic walked beside her on the long road home. The lantern's light flickered gently in her hand, casting dancing shapes upon the mossy ground and the trunks of ancient trees that now seemed less like watchers and more like guardians of her journey. But night had deepened, and with it came the return of the forest's shadows, long, shifting, and silent. The shapes at the edge of her vision stirred again, but this time Lyra did not feel fear. Where before she had clutched the lantern tight with anxious fingers, now she held it steady, letting its light shine boldly into the dark. The shadows crept closer, curious perhaps or cautious, but Lyra did not waver. She stopped upon the trail, drawing in the cool, rain-scented air, and spoke softly into the night. "I walk with the spring's gift," she said, her voice gentle but sure. "The water I carry is for healing, for hope. I mean no harm to this place." And as if her words were a key, the shadows grew still. The forest seemed to listen, and then, like a great exhale, the darkness drew back, leaving the path clear beneath the steady fall of rain. Lyra's heart swelled with quiet gratitude. The forest did not test her now. It walked with her, its mystery no longer a threat, but a companion. With each step she took, the lantern's light shone brighter, and the night shadows seemed to soften, no longer heavy with secrets, but filled instead with the promise of safe passage. The rain softened as the long night began to yield to the first tender light of dawn, casting a pale silver glow through the thinning mists of elderwood. Lyra walked on, her lantern's warm flame now mingling with the gentle promise of morning. The forest, once shadowed and secretive, felt transformed in the growing light. The towering trees stood proud and still, their leaves jeweled with raindrops that sparkled as the dawn's rays reached them. The air was fresh and sweet, filled with the scent of wet earth, moss, and the faint fragrance of unseen blossoms. Lyra felt a deep, quiet joy rise within her, the kind that fills a heart when the hardest part of a journey is behind, and the path ahead begins to feel familiar once more. As she walked, the forest seemed to open before her like a great book, turning its final pages. The moss beneath her boots grew softer, the undergrowth thinner, and through breaks in the trees, Lyra glimpsed the soft outlines of the valley beyond. The home she longed for, the village waiting in hope. The flask of spring water glowed gently in her pack, a promise kept, a gift ready to heal. And with every step she took, she felt the magic of elderwood remain with her, not as a mystery, but as a memory of courage, kindness, and the strength that grows when one walks through darkness with light in their heart. The rain song grew fainter, the dawn's light stronger, and Lyra knew that the forest had guided her true. The last veil of mist drifted from the trees as Lyra stepped toward the forest's edge, where elderwood's ancient embrace gave way to the wide open arms of the valley beyond. The rain had softened to a fine drizzle, delicate as a whispered farewell, and the first true light of dawn spilled across the land in ribbons of gold and rose, touching the wet grass and stone with warmth. Behind her, the forest stood silent and proud, its mysteries kept safe once more, its guardian unseen, but surely watching. Lyra paused at the threshold between wood and field, turning for a moment to look back at the trees that had both challenged and protected her. In the quiet, she gave a small, grateful bow, as if to thank Elderwood for its trials, its gifts, and its trust. The flask of healing water, tucked safely in her pack, seemed to hum softly against her back, a reminder of the promise she now carried home. With the valley spread before her, Lyra felt the weight of her journey ease, though her legs were tired and her boots heavy with mud. The village, still distant but now in sight, lay nestled among the hills, its chimneys beginning to smoke as early risers stirred within. The lantern in her hand glowed softly in the morning light, a symbol of all she had faced and the light that had guided her through. Each step through the dew-kissed meadow felt lighter, as if the land itself welcomed her return, and the rain, gentle and kind, sang a soft song of homecoming. The breeze carried the scent of hearth fires and wildflowers, and Lyra's heart swelled with quiet joy and relief. Soon she would place the healing water in the elders' hands, and the village would know that hope had returned. Lyra's boots met the soft earth of the meadow as she crossed from Elderwood's shadow into the open embrace of the valley, each step guided by the soft drizzle that still kissed the land and the golden light of dawn spilling across the world. The village, once so far, now felt close enough to touch, its thatched roofs shining wetly in the morning glow, thin trails of smoke curling from chimneys, and the sweet scent of baking bread and rain-washed grass filling the air. The path home led her across a small stone bridge that arched over a cheerful stream, swollen with rain and singing as it rushed beneath her feet. As she crossed, Lyra paused, lantern in hand, and glanced back one final time at Elderwood's edge, where the great trees stood silent and watchful. A breeze stirred, gentle as a mother's hand, and she felt in her heart that the forest offered her its blessing, unseen but deeply felt. The final stretch of road felt like a dream, the kind where the world glows soft and kind, where every sound, the birds greeting the dawn, the soft sigh of the breeze, the steady rhythm of her own breath, blends into a song of homecoming. Villagers began to appear, drawn by the sight of Lyra's lantern and the light in her eyes, their faces, lined with worry through the long night, now softened with wonder and hope. When she reached the village square, the elder stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion as he welcomed her back. Lyra, with hand steady and heart full, placed the flask of spring water into his care, its glow still faint beneath the morning sun. No grand speeches were needed. The gift she brought was enough. The village would heal. The forest had trusted her, and she had kept her promise. Ah, but the journey of the heart, my dear one, does not end when feet find home, nor when burdens are set down. As Lyra stood quietly in the village square, the gentle rain still falling like a blessing from the sky, she watched as the elder took the flask with reverent hands, his eyes glistening with tears of gratitude and relief. The villagers gathered close, their faces lifted toward her with wonder, their voices soft as they whispered blessings and thanks. The children, pale and weary from the sickness that had swept through the valley, peered from doorways and windows, their eyes brightening at the sight of Lyra's return. The flask's glow, though faint beneath the dawn's soft light, seemed to warm the very air, and a quiet hush fell over the square as if the land itself paused to honor the moment. Lyra felt no pride, no need for praise, only a deep, abiding peace that settled in her chest like the steady beat of the rain. She knew the gift she carried was not hers alone. It belonged to Elderwood, to the spring, to the guardians and mysteries of the forest that had tested and guided her. And in that moment, she promised herself that she would always remember the path she had walked, the lessons whispered by the rain, and the strength she had found in kindness and courage. The elder spoke softly, a prayer of thanks rising into the morning air, and Lyra's lantern, though no longer needed to light her way, flickered gently at her side, as if it, too, was at peace. The village began to stir with hope, with preparations to brew the healing tea, and Lyra stepped back, content to watch as the promise of the spring's gift was fulfilled. The rain softened to a misty drizzle as the village came alive with quiet purpose, the people moving gently and gratefully, as if afraid to disturb the peace that had settled over their homes. Lyra watched as the elder and the healers gathered around the flask of spring water, their hands steady but reverent as they prepared the first brew that would carry the spring's gift into the bodies of the sick and weary. A small fire was lit beneath a great iron kettle, and the water was poured in with care, its glow mingling with the rising steam, filling the air with a faint, sweet scent that seemed to cleanse not only the body, but the spirit too. The villagers stood in a wide circle around the square, silent but hopeful, as if holding their breath for the miracle that had been so humbly sought and so bravely delivered. Lyra stepped quietly to the edge of the gathering, the weight of her journey falling from her shoulders at last, replaced by a quiet wonder at the strength of the hearts around her. The children, who had been too weak to stand, were now gently lifted and brought forward, each given a sip of the tea brewed with spring's healing water. The elder's voice, soft but strong, spoke words of blessing over them, and as the rain kissed their faces, it felt as though the whole valley joined in that prayer. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the clean, rain-washed air, feeling the magic of Elderwood still with her, not as a force to be feared, but as a friend that would always live in her memory. She knew that healing would come, not all at once, but gently, like the rain, like the dawn, like the courage that grows in quiet hearts. And so, my dear one, let the rain's soft rhythm lull you into deeper rest. As the soft rain continued to fall, cleansing the village and blessing the fields beyond, Lyra found herself standing at the edge of it all, watching as life slowly returned to the people she loved. The children, whose cheeks had been pale with illness, now showed the faintest flush of returning health, their eyes bright, their breaths easier. The elder met her gaze across the square, his face lined with wisdom and weariness, but softened now by hope, a hope rekindled by the simple courage of a girl who had answered the call when the village needed her most. The kettle's steam rose into the rain-washed air, mingling with the mist, as if the healing water's gift was carried outward, touching every corner of the valley. And through it all, Lyra's heart swelled not with pride, but with quiet gratitude. Gratitude for the forest that had tested her, for the lantern that had lit her way, and for the strength she had found in kindness, in purpose, and in the promise she had kept. She wandered to the small hill beyond the square, where wild flowers swayed in the breeze, their petals heavy with rain. From that gentle rise, she could see both the path she had taken into Elderwood and the winding road that led beyond the village into the wide waiting world. The forest, dark and deep, stood in the distance like a friend who watches from afar, its secrets safe once more. Lyra understood now that her journey had not truly ended, for every step she had taken, every lesson learned, was part of a larger path that would always continue. She would walk it with the same steady heart, with the same light in her hand and hope in her soul. The rain song wrapped around her, a melody of endings and beginnings, trials faced and peace earned. Lyra stood upon that quiet hilltop for a long while, the gentle rain mingling with the soft breeze that carried the sweet scent of wet grass and wildflowers. Her gaze drifted from the comforting shapes of the village rooftops below to the endless stretch of land beyond, rolling meadows, winding streams, and the distant shadow of mountains whose peaks disappeared into the clouds. The valley, so familiar and beloved, seemed larger now, as if her journey through Elderwood had opened her eyes to the wonder tucked into every stone and blade of grass. The lantern at her side flickered softly, though it no longer needed to guide her feet. It was as if the light itself now burned quietly within her, a steady flame of memory and promise. With each breath of rain-washed air, she felt the weight of the forest's gift settle more deeply into her heart, not as a burden, but as a part of her, a reminder of all she had seen, all she had learned, and all she still might discover. From her vantage point, Lyra could see villagers moving about, tending to their homes, their animals, their fields, the rhythm of life returning with a gentleness that mirrored the rain. The sickness that had once shadowed their faces seemed to lift like the morning mist, replaced by cautious smiles and renewed strength. She watched as the elder moved from door to door, offering words of comfort, his hand resting often on the heads of children who now laughed softly beneath the drizzle, chasing one another through puddles as if the world had been made new. And Lyra, standing quiet upon her hill, felt a deep connection to it all, to the land, to the people, to the rain itself, which seemed to sing of renewal, of quiet strength, of hope that endures beyond the darkest night. She closed her eyes for a moment, the rain cool upon her skin, and let the peace of that moment fill her completely, knowing that the path of kindness and courage would always be hers to walk. The rain eased to a fine mist that clung to the world like a soft veil, and Lyra slowly made her way down from the hill, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth with each step. The lantern swayed gently at her side, its glow pale in the morning light, but steady, a quiet companion rather than a guide now. As she neared the edge of the village, she was greeted not with fanfare, but with warm, knowing smiles and the gentle nods of those who understood what it meant to return from a path few dared to walk. The elder waited beneath the old oak at the village's heart, his hands folded, his eyes kind and bright with gratitude. Around him, life had begun to bloom again. Gardens once wilted now stood green and eager. Animals stirred from their pens, and the laughter of children echoed through the rain-scented air like the sweetest music. Lyra joined him there, and together they stood in quiet companionship, watching as the village breathed anew, the sickness lifting, the people healing, the land itself seeming to hum with relief and joy. For a long while, neither spoke. There was no need. The forest's trials, the lantern's light, the spring's gift, all of it had woven together into something greater than words. The elder placed a hand upon Lyra's shoulder, a gesture of thanks deeper than any speech, and Lyra felt her heart swell with quiet pride, not for herself, but for the strength of kindness, of hope, of the courage to walk into the unknown for the sake of others. The rain, soft and sweet, fell around them, washing away the dust of sorrow, leaving only the promise of new beginnings. Lyra knew the journey through Elderwood had shaped her in ways she could not yet name, and that its light would walk with her always, in every step, every choice, every quiet act of care. And as the village returned to its rhythm, as the clouds parted and the sun began to warm the wet earth, Lyra turned her eyes once more to the horizon, where new paths waited, and the world stretched wide and full of wonder. As the soft rain finally faded, and the first rays of sunlight bathed the village in gentle gold, Lyra felt the world around her shift from the hush of recovery to the quiet hum of new beginnings. The village, once burdened by worry, now brimmed with quiet purpose. Doors opened wide to let in the fresh morning air. Mothers tended small gardens where bright shoots already reached for the sun, and fathers mended fences and carts, their hands steady with hope restored. Lyra wandered among them, the lantern at her side now dimmed by daylight, but still warm to the touch, its glass etched with tiny beads of rain. Children ran to greet her, their laughter free and bright, their cheeks pink with health, and they tugged at her cloak, eager to share their games, their stories, their joy at a world that seemed new again. She knelt among them, listening, smiling, and felt in their voices the reward for every step she had taken through Elderwood's deep and secret paths. But beyond the village, the land called to her still. The hills rolled softly into the distance, crowned with wildflowers swaying in the morning breeze, and beyond them, the faint blue shapes of far-off mountains promised mysteries yet to be explored. The road that led from the village gate gleamed with fresh rain, winding around beneath the arching sky, and Lyra knew in her heart that her journey was far from over. Elderwood had given her more than a gift for her people. It had given her a bond with the world's hidden wonders and a courage that would not let her rest in one place. She stood at the edge of the village square, watching as light blossomed anew, and felt both at home and on the cusp of new adventure. The lantern, though small in her hand, seemed to glow with the promise of past adventure, and forests companion, the courage that was shared. The sound of the rain washed wide from her, and I took a prisoner with its sweet calm, silver threads of mist, and the village seemed to glow beneath its warm embrace. Each rooftop glistened, each garden sparkling with the jewels of the last rain. Lyra stood at the edge of the road, her lantern swinging gently at her side, its flame small but steady, no longer needed to light her path through darkness. The small flask now cradled carefully in her hands. The water within seemed to pulse with life, as if the very heart of the forest beat quietly beneath its surface. The spirit of Elderwood regarded her with eyes deep as the night, and though no words passed between them, Lyra felt its silent blessing, a warmth that settled over her like the softest of cloaks, as comforting as the rain's steady song upon the leaves. Slowly, the guardian stepped back into the mist, fading like a dream at dawn, and the spring's glow dimmed to a gentle shimmer, as if returning to its quiet slumber beneath the earth. Lyra stood for a long moment, listening to the peace of the glade, feeling the weight of her task not as a burden, but as an honor. When at last she turned to go, the forest seemed to part for her, the path home revealed by the soft gleam of her lantern and the silver threads of rain weaving through the trees. The way that had been hidden on her journey inward now unfolded before her, as if Elderwood itself guided her steps. The rain kissed her face, cool and sweet, and the air was filled with the scent of wet leaves and blooming wild flowers. With each step, Lyra felt the forest's magic not as a mystery to be feared, but as a friend walking beside her. She carried not just the water, but the memory of the spring's light, the guardian's gaze, and the quiet strength that had brought her this far. The journey home had begun, and with it came a deep, steady peace that filled her heart as surely as the rain filled the forest streams. So rest now, dear one, and let the rain's soft rhythm guide you into gentle dreams. The rain fell on, steady and soft, wrapping the forest in its silver hush as Lyra made her way through the winding paths of Elderwood. The flask of spring water, glowing faintly within her pack, seemed to warm her back as if the spring's magic walked beside her on the long road home. The lantern's light flickered gently in her hand, casting dancing shapes upon the mossy ground and the trunks of ancient trees that now seemed less like watchers and more like guardians of her journey. But night had deepened, and with it came the return of the forest's shadows, long, shifting, and silent. The shapes at the edge of her vision stirred again, but this time Lyra did not feel fear. Where before she had clutched the lantern tight with anxious fingers, now she held it steady, letting its light shine boldly into the dark. The shadows crept closer, curious perhaps, or cautious, but Lyra did not waver. She stopped upon the trail, drawing in the cool, rain-scented air, and spoke softly into the night. "I walk with the spring's gift," she said, her voice gentle but sure. "The water I carry is for healing, for hope. I mean no harm to this place." And as if her words were a key, the shadows grew still. The forest seemed to listen, and then, like a great exhale, the darkness drew back, leaving the path clear beneath the steady fall of rain. Lyra's heart swelled with quiet gratitude. The forest did not test her now. It walked with her, its mystery no longer a threat, but a companion. With each step she took, the lantern's light shone brighter, and the night shadows seemed to soften, no longer heavy with secrets, but filled instead with the promise of safe passage. The rain softened as the long night began to yield to the first tender light of dawn, casting a pale silver glow through the thinning mists of Elderwood. Lyra walked on, her lantern's warm flame now mingling with the gentle promise of morning. The forest, once shadowed and secretive, felt transformed in the growing light. The towering trees stood proud and still, their leaves jeweled with raindrops that sparkled as the dawn's rays reached them. The air was fresh and sweet, filled with the scent of wet earth, moss, and the faint fragrance of unseen blossoms. Lyra felt a deep, quiet joy rise within her, the kind that fills her heart when the hardest part of a journey is behind, and the path ahead begins to feel familiar once more. As she walked, the forest seemed to open before her like a great book, turning its final pages. The moss beneath her boots grew softer, the undergrowth thinner, and through breaks in the trees, Lyra glimpsed the soft outlines of the valley beyond, the home she longed for, the village waiting in hope. The flask of spring water glowed gently in her pack, a promise kept, a gift ready to heal. And with every step she took, she felt the magic of Elderwood remain with her, not as a mystery, but as a memory of courage, kindness, and the strength that grows when one walks through darkness with light in their heart. The rain song grew fainter, the dawn's light stronger, and Lyra knew that the forest had guided her true. The last veil of mist drifted from the trees as Lyra stepped toward the forest's edge, where Elderwood's ancient embrace gave way to the wide open arms of the valley beyond.